Would you just look at the magisterial bezeled scallop right here? This scalloped bezel, unbelievable. Hey man, this isn't about your watches. This isn't about your self-aggrandizement. This isn't about consumerism. No, my man, this is about critical thinking. And critical thinking is antithetical to all the disgusting, vain, self aggrandizing, consumeristic things your little watch obsession represents. So let's talk about critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Today, I want to discuss what critical thinking is. I want to discuss it in the context of one of my favorite scenes in a very imperfect movie called The Matrix. In The Matrix, you can either take the blue pill of ignorance or the red pill of enlightenment. And I want to look at life as being a choice between those two pills. One, you can be a critical thinker. The other, you can be a non-critical thinker. I want to answer, what are the signs that you live in the world of non-critical thinking? Why do you transition to being a critical thinker, if you ever transition at all? What are the signs of critical thinking? And in that movie, we see that the blue pill is a life of ignorance, a life of a fabricated reality. And I would say that for those of you who take the blue pill, life is choosing the least path of resistance. It is choosing a life of mediocrity. And that choice is death. What do I mean by the least path of resistance? There's a couple I know of. They almost got a divorce. The woman watches soap operas all day. The husband, who's retired, he watches sports all day. They can never agree on what to watch. Their marital therapist came up with a solution. He said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get two of your favorite TV sets. You're going to put them in the living room. And the wife is going to watch her soap operas. And the husband is going to have headphones on so he can hear his sports. And that saved their marriage, kind of. But you know, when I had a dog who passed away a couple years ago, I'd walk her through the neighborhood, and you could see the couple, in their living room with glasses on and the reflections, the blue images, and they'd just be sitting there with all this takeout and eating. And they've been doing that for 20 years. I don't think they've spoken a word to one another in 20 years. I think they're taking the blue pill. Are they alive to you? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to get married? Go into the cave, watch your shows, never speak to your spouse, anesthetize yourself with high blood pressure pills and takeout food. I don't think you want to do that. Clearly, you have to have some kind of purpose in your life to find happiness. You need to embark on some kind of a struggle. If you don't, your life will pretty much be characterized as taking the blue pill. The blue pill of ignorance. So what are the 10 signs of taking the blue pill? Number one, you do a lot of grazing. What do I mean by grazing? You don't read anymore. You just skim. You're on the internet, or you're reading a book, or you're reading your smartphone, and you're just grazing. And as a result, the brain is adapting to your grazing lifestyle. It's shrinking its attention span. It's shrinking its power of focus. You're probably losing IQ points. Number two, you're probably doing channel surfing. And when you channel surf and you're lying there in your living room and you're eating chocolate pudding and there's nothing on television and you keep going around and around. I remember Jerry Seinfeld said, you're doing a lapse. You're doing a lapse around the TV choices. You are in a state of inertia. You can't move. You can't start on your assignment. You can't start on doing what kind of work project you want to do. That's a sign that you're taking the blue pill. Number three, you engage in mindless eating. What is mindless eating? This is when you're filling the tank of your appetite with no discrimination over the type of food you're eating. You're eating Hot Pockets, Pop-Tarts, all-you-can-eat buffets. Honestly, all-you-can-eat buffets epitomize mindless eating. And if you saw me at an all-you-can-eat buffet, I would have to quit my job as a teacher because I would lose all credibility. How in the hell can I teach critical thinking if you see me stuffing myself at an all-you-can-eat buffet, all the brain blood, all the nutritious brain blood in my giant fat gut? I'm done. Stick a fork in the kid, he's dead. So mindless eating is a sign that you are taking the blue pill. As you know, you can you can just become fat on non-nutritive food, macaroni and cheese, Pop Tarts, and have no nutrition. You can be malnourished and be fat. If that's not a sign of taking the blue pill, I don't know what is. Number 4, you text all the time. You're always texting. It's some sort of a neurosis. It's some sort of addiction to you. Uh, there's a reason why you do it. We'll talk about it in a second. It has to do with your incompleteness in life, and you're trying to make other people complete you. That's going to be an ongoing theme in taking the blue pill. Number 5, you go to the mall, and you don't even know why you're at the mall, but you've been there for 12 hours. And it's some kind of neurosis. You just need to like walk up and down the mall with your friends. If you don't go to the mall, you can be just as bad, and I've been guilty of this, by doing the same type of thing, descending into some labyrinth, some matrix on the internet. My God, I bought so much crap because I was just going down a rabbit hole on the internet. And I've done this with watches as well. Very disgusting. I'm ashamed to admit it. It's time to speak the truth. Someone's got to do it. Number 6, you blindly accept all narratives that are in the news as being legit without a critical examination of them. You know, there's a long essay, very long, probably too long, by Gloria Steinem about the deterioration of Ms. Magazine. When it started, she writes in this article, she was trying to deal with women's issues, and as the magazine tried to remain competitive, she became really frustrated because the magazine, and I hate to say this is probably true about a lot of magazines, it became the narratives that were in the magazine were really less about real content, real issues, and they were more about product tie-ins. It drove her nuts that so-called content in her magazine, these narratives that were being presented as significant and important for the readers of that magazine, were really just launch pads, just vehicles for tying in some lame product. If you're taking the blue pill, I guess you just assume that all of this content that's out there is somehow real content. It's not even real content. It's just a product tie-in half the time. The deterioration of Ms. Magazine, from Real Issue Magazine to how can I look not too tan in the winter, or whatever crap that repelled Gloria Steinem as she was working at that magazine. That's not a blue pill. I don't know what is. Number 7. Being lost in a cycle of immature relationships. What is an immature relationship? An immature relationship is when you've got the wow factor in the beginning of the relationship. It's new. You feel transformed. It's an addiction. You want to be with a person all the time. And then, just as the laws of physics, I guess, the laws of psychology, this intensity can't last. This wow moment, this being razzle-dazzled by the other person can't last. So what happens is you flatline. I mean, there's you crash. And then you resent the other person for the crash. You go, oh man, I'm so over this. And so you get out of that relationship and you simply go into a new relationship and go through the same cycle over and over and over again without any critical appraisal of what you're doing. That would be an example of the blue pill. Number 9, and I hope you don't have too many of these, or if you have all of them, maybe, who knows, maybe this presentation will lead to transformation. What are you, a TV preacher? Anyways, number 9, you're drifting along in life, just sort of in this numb zombie mode, and then occasionally that numb zombie mode is punctuated by panic. Oh my God, I'm disconnected from everything. And this sense of disconnection compels you to always check your status on Facebook, on whatever social media it is that you may be addicted to, this would be a sign of being in the blue pill. And this brings me to zombie mode. When you are in zombie mode, we can call this number 10. This is a huge presentation. Forgive me if I'll try to make it as dynamic and as non-long-winded as possible. But in the digital age, Sherry Turkle tells us, MIT professor, you become so broken in the digital age, so fragmented, that you start seeking out other human beings on social media to patch up the holes in your fragmented life. I would say that all of these characteristics represent non-critical thinking, taking the blue pill. There's a word in Arabic. Let me see if I can pronounce it. The jahiliyah, which I should spell in the notes at the bottom of this video. The jahiliyah is a long period of ignorance that you go through, and I would look at the blue pill as this long tunnel of ignorance. You are just languishing, you are slogging through the jahiliyah, and you can distract yourself from the fact that you live in the jahiliyah with Pop-Tarts, all-you-can-eat buffets, texting, immature relationships, checking your status on social media. You could die that way if you want to. And so what I want to now talk about is, why do some people transition from this zombie-like blue pill taking state to taking the red pill, to becoming a critical thinker? Well, for some of you, and not all of you, but for some of you, this process of transitioning from the blue pill to the red pill comes from going to college. In college, you have professors who deconstruct all these mythic narratives that have been fed to you all your life, and they give you certain ways of reading that are more critical, questioning the author's intentions, and which we can talk about. Imagine you're an author, for example, and you were about to publish this book on nutrition. You got $1 million book deal. This actually happened. I'm not going to mention the author's name. I don't feel like going into that right now. And it's 2 weeks before the publication date, and you, the author, are presented with a study, a new study, scientific study that contradicts your findings. And you're just about to get $1 million. Do you call the publisher and say, hey man, we my integrity's on the line here. Let's not publish it yet. Let me address this new study. I know it's inconvenient to my thesis, but my integrity's on the line. What do you do? Or do you say, oh my God, I just paid for tickets for my family to fly to Florence. We're going to be going to a variety of wine tastings and cooking classes. And so that could be an issue with your credibility, and you learn as a student sometimes to look at the author's intentions and look at the author's credibility or not. And you learn a variety of rhetorical strategies that authors use, some that are legit, some that aren't legit. We could go into that. Sometimes going to college, you're exposed to new ideas, and this can really shake you out of your blue pill. I used to teach 20 years ago. I taught in a very small town, two hours north of here in Bakersfield, and sometimes there would be these girls in my class. They were enrolled in my class, and there would be their boyfriend with them. He was not enrolled in the class, and ostensibly he was there to give her protection, escort her to her car, and I understand that. And I remember a couple of these guys, they had cowboy hats, and they were covering their eyes, and their arms across. They were looking really hostile. And as I look back on it, these guys were threatened that their girlfriends were being exposed to a whole new world. Perhaps the boyfriend was going to continue taking his blue pill, and he just knew instinctively that it might be red pill time for his girlfriend, upon which she might break up with him. That would be horrible. But I do believe such a thing happened. And that can result, I'm not saying you have to go to college. You can quit taking the blue pill of ignorance and transition to the red pill of critical thinking just through a spontaneous experience, what some people would call an epiphany. I had a student about 8 years ago or so, former drug addict, living with her boyfriend in the car. They were doing drugs in the car, living in the car, homeless. And I go, well, how did you turn your life around? She goes, I woke up one morning in the car and I just said, I want a new life, man. This is lame. I just want a normal life. I want to be able to have a job. I want to be able to use a credit card, write a check that doesn't bounce, eat a meal inside of a real kitchen. And she turned her life around just because she had this like spontaneous epiphany. In my case, I went with my buddy. He didn't go to college. I was just starting college. I was kind of precariously going through there. I went with him to the unemployment office. It was the most depressing, nicotine-stained institution I'd ever been to. This little rodent of a bureaucrat looks at us through this, this plastic window thing. He slides and goes, "What do you want? What are you going to do?" And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to go back to this institution again. I'm going to be in college. And that was a eye-opener for me. I was very, a depressing situation. Some of you, I've had people tell me, I had this boyfriend for like 5 years, and one day I just woke up and I said, oh my God, he's the devil. Why am I with this guy? The guy's the devil. So these are types of epiphanies. Do we have any other ones? Oh gosh, you could be a 40-year-old man living with your mom in the garage, and you're eating a Hot Pocket in front of the internet, and you could just say, oh my God, what am I doing? My life is done. So these are experiences that aren't necessarily tied into going to college to become a critical thinker. So what is critical thinking? Well, critical thinking is, I would say, foremost, it's developing informed opinions versus uninformed opinions. We live in a very loud, boldly opinionated country. You can hear it on talk radio. You can hear it in political punditry. And it seems like 90% of opinions that are just forcefully spewed out there are uninformed. Robert Atwan has an introduction to one of his books, and he talks about the types of opinions that are not informed at all, that inform the way we behave and the way we think and the types of attitudes we have. He talks about inherited opinions through the culture. I've inherited a love of dogs and a culture that has Lassie and Old Yeller and all these. We love dogs here. Other countries, they eat dogs, and I couldn't do that because I have certain inherited opinions growing up in my culture. We also have other types of opinions, what are called involuntary opinions. Your institution, your family, they inculcate you, they teach you things as you're a kid, and you grow up believing them. It could be religious training. It could be you have strong feelings about who gets to get married and who doesn't based on how you were raised, for example. Another type of opinion is called an adaptive opinion. You want to adapt or conform to an environment, so you embrace the opinions of the people or individual. And here's a small example. You'll hear about a guy who falls in love with this beautiful woman, and she's a vegan or a vegetarian, and he tries to be a vegan or a vegetarian, and he's trying to adapt. He even supports her views. Well, how long is he going to be a vegan or vegetarian? Maybe as long as that relationship lasts. Maybe not even that long. I don't know. But that would be an example of an adaptive opinion. But then you have what Atwan calls, these are considered opinions. These are when you have firsthand experience. These are when you have firsthand knowledge. This is where you actually study the details of the topic, and very importantly, you actually study your opposition's views. You study both views of a controversial topic. You're not so scared that you have to live in your little bubble, and so you can entertain both views. So critical thinking is knowing what it takes to develop informed opinions. Another important part of being a critical thinker is you have to spend time alone. You need to be able to be alone with yourself intellectually and emotionally so you can become a whole person. And if you can become a whole person, paradoxically enough, Sherry Turkle, MIT professor, tells us. Only then can you develop deep connections with other human beings, as opposed to just desperately reaching out to connect to people when you can't even connect with yourself or be whole with yourself. A critical thinker learns to be alone, thrives on a certain amount of solitude, where you can just be either alone with yourself or alone with a book. Uh, Critical thinking requires a lot of solitude. Some of you may not like to hear that. Uh, Number 3, critical thinking repels hype. My God, I mean, when I think of some of the big mistakes I made, I've been a victim of hyperbole. I've been a victim of my own hyperbole. I've you know, seen a watch and said, "Oh my God, I have to have it," and then I get it, and then I'm disappointed with it, and I feel like a moron after I do that. Always, a critical thinker knows how to distance himself from his emotions and give that hype a chance to just go down a few notches and let him see if that hype is really worth what it's all about. Uh, Man, people are so quick to get into hype over a certain issue. Number 4, you have to be able to repel propaganda and chicanery and fallacious thinking. You have to understand what logical fallacies are. For example, there's over 100 logical fallacies. A common one would be the either or fallacy in life. You know, there's not necessarily two choices. Uh, when I was not wanting to play football my junior year, the coach grabbed me. Boom! You either play football for me or you're not a real man. Well, really? Were those my two choices? Or, you know, you're on your first date, you're nervous, and the girl says to you, "You either kiss me, you're not a real American." What the hell? What's that mean, man? I either kiss you or I'm not a real American. I either play football or I'm not a real man. Who are these people telling me the situation is either this or that? Well, there's just so many critical logical fallacies that you got to learn. That would be a whole other presentation. I just wanted to give you an example of one at the moment. Another important part of critical thinking is it repels, and speaking of either or fallacy, it repels binary arguments, either or arguments. In life, you'll find that arguments are not necessarily either or. You know, let's take the death penalty. It's not either you're for it or you're against it. I don't think it's that simple. Um, you could be against it 99% of the time for a variety of reasons, but then have a 1% clause that says, you know, there are some situations where we know who did it and the evil is so egregious that we're going to do it in this case. And, you know, we're going to do it not only because of that, but because if you let this person in prison, this person shows a tendency to kill in prison. So something like that. But, you know, it's not binary. That's one example. The other important part of being a critical thinker is you have to explore opposing views. You have to be humble enough to entertain the possibility that you could be wrong about certain things. You know, most of us in America, we live in a bubble where we just want to talk to people who agree with us. I mean, isn't the internet and the websites and the blogs and the YouTube channels, aren't they all people who just want to see a reflection of themselves? I don't know. Another important part of being a critical thinker is metacognition, the ability to think about what you're doing. Jerry Seinfeld calls this the third eye. He says sometimes he'll be talking to someone and his third eye will rise up to the ceiling and he will look down on him and this person talking. And he says a lot of his comedy comes from the third eye. Another term, as I said, metacognition. I'll give you an example of metacognition. Husband and wife are in a huge argument, perhaps the worst argument of their marriage. And words, the volume, the body language of the hostility, it's escalating. It's escalating. It's escalating. horrible, mean things are being said. And the husband, he has a third eye experience. He rises above, high in the sky, and he looks down at himself and his wife fighting and arguing and screaming. And as he's looking down, he realizes if this continues, there are going to be some words exchanged that can never, ever be taken back. And once that happens, the marriage is seriously in jeopardy. So what does the man do? He goes like this. He goes, oh my God, oh, my stomach. And he runs into the bathroom, he slams the door, locks the door, and he's in the bathroom for like 3 hours. Maybe he's reading books or something. You know, this whole facade of having a stomach ache. What did that man just do? I'll tell you what he did. He saved the marriage. That's what he did. Saved it because of the third eye. That's critical thinking right there. The other thing about being a critical thinker is that you're able to focus on the trees, but you're also able to stand back and see the forest. Some people just focus on the trees and they lose sight of the forest. I remember one of my favorite scenes from a movie, The Dollhouse by Todd Solondz. Real nihilistic movie director. People don't like his movies. I understand why. Happiness is probably his best movie. Welcome to the Dollhouse is a pretty good one too. But his movies just have no redemption in them, so they're pretty tough to watch. But there's a funny scene in Welcome to the Dollhouse where this 10-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl asks her 16, 17-year-old brother, who's at his computer, she says to him, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And he turns around and he grimaces, "Of course I don't. I'm trying to get into a good college." You know, a good example of a guy who's so focused on his goal that he's becoming an emotional wreck. He's not developing social skills. That's a pretty good example of someone who sees the trees so much, lose sight of the forest. Now, one of my students gave me an example of this. This is insane. He said his neighbor became jealous of another neighbor who bought a Lexus. The non-Lexus owning neighbor worked more hours at his engineering job to get even a bigger Lexus than the other neighbor. And while this envious neighbor was working so many hours and ignoring his wife had an affair with a guy who had the smaller Lexus. So at one point, the hard-working engineer got that big Lexus, but he lost his wife. Always be able to see the trees and the forest. That is a good lesson for me, someone who is a watch obsessive, who sometimes sees the trees too much. Sometimes you got to stand back and see the forest. That's part of being a critical thinker. The other thing about being a critical thinker is that I think that quality repels pride. You don't want to say to yourself, "I'm a critical thinker. I take the red pill. Look at all those people eating at Hometown Buffet. I'm so much better than they are." No, that's not a good attitude. I think if you're a critical thinker, you know that you can be an idiot, you can be dumb, you're susceptible to being lame, to being self-destructive, and you're on guard to that. And it takes a certain amount of, and you don't want to be obnoxious anyway. So I think being a critical thinker repels pride. Number 10, I think being a critical thinker means you have to develop a vocabulary to be able to express yourself in a sophisticated way. I mean, there are so many words that you have to know that are important to express yourself. Let me just give you a few examples. Schadenfreude, which is now an English word. It's been in the English dictionary since 1993. Obviously, it comes from the German language. Schadenfreude is taking pleasure in other people's failures. A straw man argument is when you take your opponent's argument and you twist it just a little bit to make his argument look dumb so that you can attack it. That's very dishonest. Can't stand the straw man argument. Passive aggressive is when you're showing hostility in a cowardly, underhanded way, like a student who comes to my class and says, "Hey, McMahon, do we need to read the syllabus? Hey, McMahon, do we need to take notes? McMahon, do we need to bring a pen to class?" Don't be dumb, because you're not really being dumb. You're being a wise ass. That's passive aggressive behavior. So there's just so many words. What is a populist? What is an elitist? What is an oligarchy? What is a corporatocracy? What is a trope? What is a meme? What is a canard? There's just so many words. What does the word Hobbesian mean? From the philosopher Hobbes. And I could go on and on. What is a moral absolutist? What is a moral relativist? So number 11, when you become a critical thinker, and this is painful for you, and I have to mention this, when you become a critical thinker, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of family, friends, and associates who aren't going to go on that journey with you. They're not going to take that red pill with you. And I'm sorry, but your connection to those people is not going to remain. It's gone. And I teach a lot of essays from intellectuals who've gone through this process of becoming critical thinkers, and they write about that. They say it's really painful. It makes them feel guilty. I mean, relationships with their own family are tattered as a result. When you become a red pill taker, you're no longer provincial. You no longer have certain prejudices. You're just no longer entertained by the bread and circus that informs the masses. And that's just part of being a critical thinker. Now, I don't want you to become a critical thinker and say to your family, friends, associates, I can't associate with you anymore because I'm a critical thinker and you're not. It doesn't work that way. I mean, what happens is you just gradually grow apart from people, but it is painful, and a lot of you will feel guilty about it. The other thing you want to understand if you become a critical thinker, a lot of your friends are going to be jealous. There's a very common analogy about this type of hate, where you've got crabs in a bucket, and you, the crab, exiting the bucket, and then the crabs beneath you are trying to pull you back in. Misery wants company. And I think people who watch you become a critical thinker, they know you're moving on. They know it's probably in your best interest, but they're envious, and for whatever reason, they don't have the wherewithal to become critical thinkers. That's a fascinating question. I don't know how to answer that ultimately. Why do some people become critical thinkers? Why do some people not become critical thinkers? I don't think it has a lot, I'm sure intellect has something to do with it, but I don't think it's just that. I think there are other forces there. So I hope you have some kind of understanding of critical thinking. I hope you feel motivated to be a critical thinker. I think that the non-critical thinking profile I gave should be completely unappealing to you. That's my case. And I'm done. Until next time, I am out. Thank you.